Well, good afternoon to everybody. I'm very happy to be here with you today. This will be, I think it's my fourth telemedia event, so I think that makes me a regular by now. That's pretty cool. And just to have a temperature check of the room, because I see a few familiar faces, but I want to know, is anybody in this room that haven't run Google Ads campaigns yet? Or are we all somewhat familiar on how to run? Okay. I think everybody knows how to run campaigns, supposedly. We will see about that. And my next question would be, somebody running Google Ads campaigns but are feeling that the results are not quite there where they want to? Nobody? Got one here. I got a few over there. Okay. Let's see. I'm hoping that this talk will give you a little bit more of advice on how to run Google Ads campaigns. But we're going to keep it very simple, very straightforward, okay? And if there is anything that you would like to discuss from these points, we can do so after the session. We can have a one-to-one talk, and then we can see how this translates to your specific situation. Okay, so without further ado, this is the agenda for today. So I'm going to share with you my step-by-step on how to run successful Google Ads campaigns, what we should be looking at, what are the things that we should avoid, and overall, the best practices so that we can have a sustainable and growing operation. And then I want to talk a little bit about the type of support that you guys could be getting. These obviously have a few specifics that are for our program, so in all honesty, maybe I won't be able to work with all of you guys, but hopefully if I'm not the one, I'll be somewhat capable to redirect you to somebody from my team that will provide you support, okay? So, a guide for success. And the first thing that I want to go through, obviously, is the account structure. And how are we setting up campaigns? What is the structure that we're using? If we're using a single MCC to run everything in there, are we using multiple accounts? So my main recommendation when we're thinking about, okay, how do I set up my operation that sets me up for success, my first recommendation will always be diversify. So we put everything into the same basket. That could be an issue later on for multiple reasons. Obviously, understanding the audience here, policy is going to be a major issue. We're going to have a little discussion about that later on. But as you can expect, there's not much that I can share on that topic, but I'll try to be very straight to the point and share what I can. But also in terms of how we see the data, how we interpret the data, and how we can take that data for better successful campaigns, this is also important. So the more we diversify into our structure, the better we're going to be able to make conclusions. So we have a few different points here in terms of audience targeting, content placements, and exclusions. So the first thing, and I'll start with the last one, is the exclusions. As you may know, when we're targeting certain countries, the Google Ads system will allow you to target per carrier, but in some others, we don't. Okay, we don't have enough data. So this is very important from your end to be able to retrieve enough information about the IPs of the carriers where you don't want traffic so that we can upload them into the system, and that way we avoid traffic that is not useful for us. In terms of content versus placements, this is also a very hot topic. The way that we get the placements really will be, or the best way I would say, will be through our own data. Okay? If we have that data at hand beforehand, it's a great plus because that will more or less make our ramping up phase a lot faster. But if we don't have those placements yet, it's about launching campaigns and start retrieving some data so that we can make some conclusions later on. But it's important that when we launch campaigns, we have the discipline to rotate those placements and to see which ones are working and which ones are not, because we don't want to spend investment in placements or places that are really not converting well, or where the CPAs are super high. And also in audience targeting, I think this is also an important point. Depending on the product that we have, it's important that we have an understanding of who our potential user is. Okay, so the more we have knowledge about the type of service that we're promoting, because I do know a lot of the times we're just eager to launch some services and products into the market without really understanding how the market is going to react to that service that we're promoting. So the more information that we have about our service or our product, the more information we're going to have to build a successful campaigns in terms of targeting, which is the audience we should be showing our ads to. And also based on that, we're going to do some A/B testing. So ideally, we will separate the campaigns based on the target audience that we're trying to acquire and see which ones are providing us the best results. And then just rotate, because I think that's a keyword here. Rotate a lot the type of campaigns that we're doing, and then just put our investment in the best performers. And this is very important because the data that Google is able to give to you is data that probably no other DSP has. Okay? It's intent-based, it has multiple sources, and it's fresh insights. So the algorithm is based in a way that it can give you a lot of information, but we need to understand the information that we're receiving, and we need to adapt to it. And for me, timing is also of the essence here. Because I've seen a lot of mistakes being done, not because the campaigns were not set up correctly, it's just because our inability to make changes when it mattered. So if we let the campaigns run for more time that we think that they need some changes, the algorithm, you will see, it will start dropping the results. Okay? And then it will take us more time to actually calibrate the algorithm again so that we have the results that we were getting and even grow with them. Now, into the bidding strategies. Here, for me, up until this point, and also with this slide, it's going to be about how do I set up my campaigns correctly in order to have positive results. And I'm going to share with you 6 pitfalls that I've seen a lot of players fall into them in the last 2 to 3 years. Some of them are obvious, some of them are not that obvious, okay? But I'm going to go through all of them, so you tell me which one are affecting you the most. So the first one is about being overconfident in the results that we need to get. So this is really important, setting expectations. I think I'm going to get to this point. I need this result. I need to get to this result as fast as I can. Believe me, that's what everybody wants, but it's not necessarily something that we can accomplish in the first weeks of launching campaigns. So setting a target CPA below the historic CPA of that specific geo is always going to be an issue. So I've had clients that work with us saying, listen, Luis, I know that in UAE I can get a target CPA of 3. So I want to push the algorithm and set 2.8 as my target CPA. But we're just launching campaigns. So basically what the algorithm is going to do is going to try to find you leads at that specific price, but probably won't find a lot of volume. So volume is the second name of this game as well. We need a lot of volume so that we can eventually reach our target CPAs, but we have to be mindful on which is our starting point. So ideally, what I recommend to my clients is that we need to set a CPA at least 5 or 4 times higher than is possible within the market. Because by doing so, we're going to give the algorithm some space to optimize, okay? Start finding some leads, start finding some volume, and then slow and step by step, we're going to decrease that target CPA, okay? But if we start very aggressive with the algorithm, trying to basically push its limits to see what it sees, the end result is going to be, it's not going to consume the budget, okay? And slowly but surely, it's going to stop. So that's the main pitfall, or the first pitfall that we want to avoid. The second is analyzing the results when we are still in the learning phase. And I've had a lot of calls regarding this. I know when we launch a campaign, there's a sense of urgency that we want to see results the first 5 days of the campaigns. And really, this is really difficult to achieve. Okay, for the first 2 weeks, the algorithm is just trying to recover data from different touch points. So if our expectation is that by this point we should start making changes, really what it's going to do again is that it's going to reset the algorithm into a learning phase, and it's never really ready to optimize. So for the first week, we need to let it as is. So the idea is to set up a strategy that makes sense, okay, that we know is solid regarding the characteristics of the market, and then we just let it be. The third one is overlooking high conversion delay when analyzing performance, and this also has a little asterisk on it, because once upon a time, we used to upload conversions via the typical Google conversion tag. this has migrated now to uploading information via offline conversions, which, if you ask me, that's the proper way to do it, okay? Because it's gonna more or less be able to bypass the policy issue that we have when we redirect users, and also the data that comes from offline conversion, to me, is more trustworthy as well. Okay, so there's always a lag of at least 48 hours in the data that you see within Google Ads and the data that was actually in our CRM or the aggregator or the telco is providing to us. So when we analyze results, always try to do it in a period that is not to current day, but to a few days back, and then we can more or less have a sense of what's going on. The fourth one is looking at the run metrics. I'm going to be super specific here. If you're looking at CPC, it really doesn't have any type of relevance. Okay, we need to look at CPA really and the volume of conversions. Those are the two metrics that are really going to set you up for success. And with that, we can make some decisions regarding the type of campaigns that we're running. Not providing campaign budget headroom or accelerating budget, that's what I mentioned before. The idea here is to set the budget at least 4 times our CPA. So the calculation is pretty simple. If we are trying to acquire a customer at €3 per customer, okay, we multiply that times 4 or 5, and then we multiply that number times the conversions that we can get from that market. Here are some considerations. Either we have a cap per market or we don't, okay? So usually, or the idea would be try to find those offers where we have no cap, but if we do have a cap, then do this calculate, and that will give us the amount of conversions that we can get on a daily basis and hopefully trend towards achieving that number. And lastly, continuously making major changes to the campaign, and this is a pitfall that is so regular that is crazy, but I've seen advertisers get into panic where the CPA is super high. I don't know, they were expecting a target CPA or a CPA of 6, they see it at 15, and they go into panic mode, and they want to pause everything. That's a major mistake, okay? Because we need to allow the algorithm to optimize and to start bringing you more leads, more volume that eventually will make the target CPA go down. But if we panic and pause everything or start doing a lot of changes within because we think it's not working, what it's going to do is that it's going to send the algorithm again into a learning phase, and it's like a reset button, okay? We're going to have to wait 2 weeks again. It's going to try to optimize. The results are not going to be the ones that we were looking for. And the end result most of the times is that we think that the campaign didn't work, that we were not successful, and we shut it down and leave it at that, when actually we could have achieved some pretty good results if we had given the time to the algorithm to actually work properly and optimize. Although I'll say, based on my opinion and the clients that I've worked with, the only red flag that I would see to make that conclusion, if it's the CPA that we're getting is actually outrageously higher than what we should be getting. So if we launch a campaign where our target CPA is 5, we're getting 12, 14, I think that's acceptable. If we see that the CPA is at €60 where it should be 5, then obviously there's a red flag there that we need to analyze and go into the specifics to try to understand what's going on. Now, in terms of creative tests and data tracking, I think I want to spend my time mostly on creatives, okay? Because this is a huge part of this conversation, and it's also to your interest in terms of policy, okay? So we need to make sure that we're protecting the users, and that's always going to be Google's position about it, okay? We need to make sure that the assets that we're putting out there for public to see and convert are as compliant as they can be. So that means a lot of branded assets. So there needs to be an asset that when the user sees it, is comfortable enough to actually click it and knows and understands specifically what type of service is he getting into. Okay. Also, something that we need to avoid 100%, the word download, that's explicitly forbidden. The typical, download arrow that we use as an image, that's also not good. And I know in a lot of your minds you're saying, but everybody uses them. Sometimes they convert a lot, they're very useful. Yes, but that's not the position that we want to be in, because eventually that will make us go into the policy issue, we're going to get the account suspended and it's going to be impossible to get it back. Okay, so from my understanding of how the business works, I know there are a lot of players that are doing this, but it's not our recommendation, will never be a recommendation, and we need to, step into a more compliant arena that perhaps will not get you the results that you were looking for in an immediate form, but it's a long-lasting strategy. So if we want to make money quick, you can take your risks. We don't advise it. If we want to make money in a long-term fashion and we want to be a sustainable operation, we need to migrate our assets into a more compliant fashion. Now, in terms of timelines and evaluation periods, this is a map that we've created to set some expectations as where once I launch campaigns, how should they look like? Okay, so the first time, or the first 1 to 14 days, is a ramping up period. We basically set up, based on the information that I just shared, based on the content that we have, we set up a strategy, we commit to that strategy, we launch campaigns, and then we let them be for 14 days. Okay, to most of my clients, I say, please lose your Google Ads password, don't look for it, don't try to get into the system, just let it be, and in 14 days' time, we can see how we are doing. Obviously, when we're trying to set budgets, there's always a period of time, and I recommend that it's done in the first 14 days. We're not really trying to achieve the volume that we would once we have the operation consolidated. So ideally, we would set small budgets based on the market that we're trying to launch campaigns, and then for 14 days, let it optimize at that budget. Usually, I recommend my clients that they set up a 30, 40, 50 euro per day, okay, more or less. That will give enough room, but still, it's not enough budget for us to panic in terms of I'm burning money and I don't know if I'm getting the results that I want. So for the first 14 days, smaller budgets, just to see that everything is running smoothly, letting the algorithm optimize towards our CPA. And then from 15 to 28 is when we could potentially start doing some changes. Okay? At this point, still, I think it's very early on, so drastic changes are not recommended, but then we can see, okay, what are the assets that are performing the best, what type of rotations can we do, what type of placements are generating more conversions, and then based on that, we do small adjustments. And then the third phase, obviously, would be how much of this information are we recovering, and then we can set up some trends and make some conclusions about the performance of those campaigns specifically, and we can discuss if we want to launch other offers in that same country or if we want to launch new type of campaigns in that same country or not. Okay, but up until the first 30 days, I'll say we are in the learning phase. There isn't a lot of changes that are expected. And from what I've seen from clients, and this is important when you discuss it internally, or if you're working with a team that is running campaigns for you, it is really hard to get to that target CPA within the first 60 days, okay? So that's something, a topic that will help you set up expectations. And if we are aligned on that matter, it's going to be much easier to actually achieve better results or good results. Okay, now a little bit, or just a little bit of policy. Okay, as I was saying, the main issue here is that Google needs to know and needs to recognize that we are protecting the users. The user is what makes Google Google today. Okay, if we start pushing for products that are not compliant within Google policy, that we feel is going to bring a lot of heat for Google, then the company doesn't want it. That's the reality. So we want to make sure that we are between the limits, obviously, of what's legal. That's without a question. But also, we have to be a little bit tougher on the advertisers as well, and we have to analyze if this is something that I consider good business or not, because the users will always be our main partners. Okay, so if we are promoting a service that is of high quality, if the subscription flow, we can consider it as legit, that for instance, I don't know if somebody in this audience is still doing it, but one-click flow is something that it's highly a no-go in the industry, at least now from the Google side. But we need to make sure that the offer is legit, is of high quality, and that anybody, if they scrutinize the offer, would say, okay, this is something that it makes sense to be out there in the market, and it makes sense for Google to be pushing because there's a demand and it's a good product. Okay? And these are the two common reasons for suspensions. So we have circumventing systems and we have unacceptable business practices, which are derived from separate use cases. So the first one is when Google feels that you're trying to trick the ad review process. Okay, typically, and what I've seen in the past, this happens when we redirect customers. So we send them to a landing page, and then to the actual service, this generates problems. Okay, I know in the industry it's pretty common, but if we can avoid it and have a flow that it seems more organic, that is going to help. And then with unacceptable business practices, it will depend on the type of information that you have on your landing page. Okay, we need to disclose as much information to the user as possible. Okay, we need a contact information within a number or an email. We need to be specific about the terms and conditions so the user understands what he's subscribing to, but it also gives them the opportunity to, if I don't want this service anymore, how do I cancel it? Okay, and it needs to be easy for that customer. It cannot be like the only reason that I can suspend now my subscription is if I call the bank and cancel my credit card. That is a huge mistake, okay? And that's something that we need to avoid. So we need to make sure that the product that we're working with has a reasonable support system that can handle this type of complaints. Also, this is a list of the topics that I just mentioned. Am I mentioning the pricing? Am I mentioning the support contact? Is there a telephone that I can call? Is it pretty clear if it is a weekly subscription, a monthly subscription, a daily subscription? So all of these topics, and put yourself in the shoes of the user, okay? If you were the user, would you be subscribing to this type of service, okay? And obviously, the conversation of performance is going to come along. So the easiest is for me to subscribe the user, the more money and the more volume I'm going to get. But as you may know by now, that's not a strategy, okay? It will end up in account suspensions, it would end up in ads being disapproved, and eventually it will hurt the operation more, rather if we try to be compliant with all of these items. Now, in terms of contacting support and a few best practices, because I don't know, I know a few here, but I don't know if everybody in the audience. There's two ways that you can handle your operation at Google. One is very self-service. You do it on your own, and you have the Google resources to try to help you when it's needed. Or you have an account manager assigned, and that person will also give you advice on how to proceed on certain topics. But in terms of expectations and best practices, I'm going to start there. If you have a question about billing or policy or performance, you can actually reach our Google Ads support, but you have to be super specific on what you need, okay? And provide as much information as you need. So the same happens when for instance, I want to present an appeal for an ad that has been suspended or an account that has been suspended. I have to be super specific, okay? You have to be mindful that probably the person that is reviewing your information doesn't know a lot about the industry or what you're trying to do, how it works. So the more I explain to them, the higher the chances for me to actually have a successful appeal and have my ads back live. In terms of ETAs, this really will depend on the issue that is being raised. So it goes through a filter of different teams. I would say for an initial answer, it's good to expect between 48 and 72 hours, and sometimes it will be more. But also if you have an account manager or are working with an account manager, it's also wise, to have the consult with them and see how fast this can be tackled. And in terms of common responses, this one is important because when we have some ads disapproved and we see that the review process is not actually working as it should, sometimes it's good to delete all of the ads that we had and just upload them again for a new review process. And that could be faster than if we keep appealing or trying to get the ads that we had on approved. Great. And now a little bit about the acceleration program. How do we work? What can you expect? And if we can be of help. So we have different tiers that our team has divided based on the investment. Okay, we try to give support to as many clients as we can, but obviously there is a limitation to that. We are a small team, so we don't have the capacity to work with everybody as we would like. So if you are within these tiers, starting from above 20K of investment, then we can talk to you, we can have a meeting, a one-to-one, and assess more or less how much we can give you in terms of resources, business intelligence, best practices, etc. So the bronze tiers will be the most basic. It will be a reactive type of support, okay, where we will try to give you some information where we cannot engage with you, okay, on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, but still, we can still help you out, give you some information that will hopefully set you up for success. The silver tier is above 60K, okay, if we are on that, then you can expect a more hands-on approach from our end. We can give you more information, we can set up some weekly or monthly meetings, and then from there, try to share from our side as much information as possible to obviously help those campaigns grow. And if you are on the golden tier, which is a monthly investment above 100K, then our team essentially becomes part of your marketing team, okay? And we will give you as much from our side as we can, okay? With the Google expertise in the industry, but obviously as Google itself, okay? If you have any questions, which I think, because we are right on time, we're gonna go straight into the next panel. But if you have any other questions, you can contact me here. That's my email. Okay, you can send a request. I'll try to assess more or less where you are at that moment in time. And if it is not me, the one that can work with you, I'll try to redirect you to the team that will actually be able to provide you some support. That's it, guys. Thank you.